Coming up on episode 51 of the Up Full Life podcast.
And Chicago was extremely violent during the George Floyd protests. There were just police cars flying up and down the street outside the church, you know, late at night, and there were just always like flashing lights coming through it. It really felt like, you know, we're in the middle of the Trump presidency. There's a pandemic raging with no end in sight. The city is on fire, and like, you know, there's a curfew, and the only food available is McDonald's and like, you know, the convenience store. And it was just like, what the hell is going on? You know, and it was like, but it was great because I was in the church and like I had everything there that I could ever need to like be engaged, you know. And I don't know, it was pretty surreal, man. I can't even believe it happened sometimes.
I personally feel that what happens here is vital and very important, and what the world is in desperate need of. And also that what happens here does echo. It reverberates, right? The word Suwannee is a Timucuan word for echo. And what happens here reverberates. And the spirit of the Suwannee Music Park, if you play with the etymology of all those words, this place, you know, park, can be brought back to like Old French for paradise, Suwannee meaning echo, spirit of the Latin spiritus meaning to breathe, breathing, and music meaning the sciences of the muses. And there's 9 muses and they cover everything: painting, music, literature, poetry, epic poetry, all of that stuff. So this place really is a paradise where the echoes of the sciences of the muses breathe. It's a living thing, and we are a part of a living tradition.
I'm a bozo. Oh, yeah, I thought you had it. You recognize it. I love that. Many people like him.
Let's drink a toast forever and ever. Let's drink a toast forever and ever.
Yes, indeedy. Welcome to the Up Full Life podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and this is episode number 51, coming at you live and direct from the Vibe Junkie Studio in Oakland, California. Area 51. We out here. And best believe we are so grateful you are tuning in. Episode 51 is brought to you by our friends at Suwannee Hulaween. Amazing festival down there at Spirit of Suwannee Music Park in Live Oak, Florida. Been going down there for like over a dozen years. Bear Creek was held there. Purple Hatter's Ball. Most recently Suwannee Rising. And of course, Suwannee Hulaween, which is a string cheese incident hosted festival, but really spills out in a gazillion directions and is so diverse that I'm not a string cheese fan, but I go to this festival every year. mostly because of the crew that puts it together and the place that it's held, the Spirit of Suwannee Music Park. Very close to my heart. I found myself there at a very wayward time in my life in 2008 at the first Bear Creek, and that's when everything changed. Shout out to my man Otis, who didn't introduce me to Paul Levine, who was one of the cats behind Bear Creek and is one of the cats behind Suwannee Hulaween. And that dude straight up changed my life. So I've been going to his events down there at the park ever since. Met my soon-to-be bride at Bear Creek 2011. We got engaged there in 2018 at Hulaween, and we're getting married there next year. Almost 11 years to the day of making each other's acquaintance. So naturally, this is a very spiritual place for us, for me, and for thousands of others. We've got some special Spirit of Suwannee Hulaween treats at the end of this very episode, but I wanted to give a shout to, of course, Paul the Wolf, Paul Levine, and his other partner in crime, Mr. Michael Berg, two very dear friends of mine, and their whole staff and team behind the magic and mystery and mysticism of Suwannee Hulaween. And you can read my report on this year's event, which was just supreme on so many levels. I went deep on the matter, on Live for Live Music. You can find it on upfullife.com or Live for Live Music. My Hulaween 2021 report. And shout out to Mandy, who does the media down there at Hula, and of course M.A. and Ramon and all the cats in production, and Trey Bien, the chef to the stars. Just an amazing and really righteous squad down there at the Spirit of Suwannee Music Park in Suwannee Hulaween. And frankly, I wouldn't be where I am today had I not gone there back in those dark days, those uncertain, foreboding times in the fall of 2008, and got the keys to the kingdom and the secrets of the universe alike. So you're listening to Look Out by Orgone off their record Cali Fever. It's an old track, a banger, and I had some Orgone on the brain because we talk about Orgone in this episode, and you'll hear in a little bit just why.
Don't wanna be free now.
Just want to remind everyone to please smash that subscribe button. Whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice, please subscribe. And if you have the time and are so inclined, please rate or review the Up Full Life podcast on Apple Podcasts. Just a few sentences or words about the show as a review goes a long way on moving those algorithms in this direction, bringing new ears, new minds, new listeners to the Up for Life podcast. And we give thanks for everybody that tunes in. And please leave a rating or a review and subscribe to the Up for Life podcast on your platform of choice. You can reach me directly. Send an email, b.getz@upfullife.com, b.getz@upfullife.com. Any suggestions, vibrations, any kind of constructive criticism, or I appreciate every time I hear from a listener. And it means a whole lot if you do shoot me a line. And lastly, if you want to support the Up for Life podcast, whether it be for the podcast itself or my work in music media in general, you can do so for just $1 or $2 a month at patreon.com/upfullife. We got some new stickers on order. We've got a bunch of crate digging music links and other special treats through patreon.com/upfullife. This is the Meters from the Kingfish Lounge in Baton Rouge back in October of '76. Doing Ain't No Use and to do that stuff. And then, yeah, let's get into episode 51. Area 51. Y'all know what it is.
Running through my life, get father and father behind me, and I'm not answering for anything I did anymore.
Yes, indeedy. We're back, episode 51, and it is again an honor and a privilege to welcome Neal Francis to the show. Now, I've been angling for this one for a hot minute, and you know, Neal is a buzz bin artist, if there ever was one. Y'all remember the buzz bin MTV back in the day. Well, I've been hearing all kinds of good things about Neal Francis, going back to his time with The Herd in Chicago, you know, almost 10 years ago now. And most recently, his rebirth as a solo artist, Neal Francis, with the album Changes from 2019, and the recently released In Plain Sight, which dropped on November 5th. So he's been doing a flurry of press surrounding the new record. I know he's been on a podcast or two already, but I was stoked that Brendan at 10 Adams, his manager, was able to hook me up with an hour with Neal while he was on the road, Charleston, South Carolina. So it was afternoon for him, morning for me. And, you know, I got to say I was a little nervous. I mean, this is a cat who's kind of like it factor right now is exploding. He's talking to a lot of journalists. He's obviously playing all kinds of different studio gigs and release parties, and he's, you know, been feted as royalty, and in my opinion, deservedly so. He's bringing an original thing that's also a throwback and nod to the progenitors of his particular vintage aesthetic. Chicago and New Orleans, and garage funk, boogie woogie piano, and so much in there. And he's also struggled with addiction rather mightily and publicly, much like myself, and it's in the music and on the nose. And so naturally, I thought it would be interesting and heart-filling and enlightening to discuss a bit of that with him as well. I'm going to read a little bit of his all-music bio for those of you less initiated. And of course, we get into a whole lot of his story, so I'll keep it brief. But prior to launching his solo career, Chicago singer-songwriter and pianist Neal Francis cut his teeth at a young age as a blues sideman, then as a member of a promising funk ensemble, The Herd, before addiction nearly got the best of him. After getting clean, he developed a retro-driven style blending classic R&B with New Orleans rhythms, blues, and a healthy dose of early 70s rock, and then launched a solo career with his 2019 debut album Changes. 2 years later, he released his absorbing and kaleidoscopic sophomore effort, In Plain Sight. This is really well written, Timothy Monger. And then we get into his roots, getting turned on to Pinetop Perkins and Otis Spann, and then he was eventually a teenage prodigy and keyboardist for Muddy Waters' son, Mud Morganfield. where he learned and took some tricks from that veteran band, as well as his obsession with New Orleans icons like Allen Toussaint, the great Dr. John, and then he joined up with The Herd in Chicago, an instrumental funk ensemble back in 2012. That's kind of gets you up to where he took stock of his life and career, reversed course, got clean, and focused on writing songs. And I'm going to let him tell the rest of the story, because we get into a lot more of that part of his life and less the early years. But we, of course, touched on a number of his collaborators like Sergio Rios from Oregon, who's my man. Sergio, if you're listening, please come on the podcast. We'd love to chop it up with you. Of course, Chris Galbuta, who you've heard on this pod before and hopefully again. And then David Shaw from The Revivalists, Derek Trucks, and so forth. So yeah, great talk with Neal Francis. Got a chance to tell him how changes affected my life in a profound way during the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter protests. Right in that week, I was out in Tahoe, and again, I was hip to him and I liked his music, but a little bit of psychedelics mixed with a meteor shower and the isolation of deep in the Tahoe National Forest allowed me to have a really spiritual and profound breakthrough experience with this song, and then later by proxy his music, his catalog, his whole vibe. He's got these amazing covers all over YouTube, but what he really does well is mine a certain space that really resonates with me. So let's hear a little ditty from Neal doing some John Sebastian Bach, real quickie on the organ, just because it's like quirky and cool and psychedelic and awesome. And then we'll hear from Neal Francis on episode 51 of the Upful Life podcast.
Film at actual speed, we can witness the otherwise invisible process known as crystallization.
All right. Well, long time in the making today. I've been a fan of this guy going back to the first time I saw The Herd at Fire Fest in New Orleans years ago. And, just your journey has been inspiring and illuminating musically and spiritually and in so many ways that we're going to touch on. So I'm so grateful to have an opportunity to speak with you. Welcome to the Upful Life podcast, Neal Francis.
Thanks, B. It's good to be here, man.
Yeah, man. So where am I talking to you from today?
We're in Charleston, South Carolina.
Right on. Yeah, I've got a cousin there. Great little city down there in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here in Oakland. I'm originally from Philly, but I'm out here in Oakland. So it's still morning, but really just stoked. I know you're a busy guy and a lot happening in your career. And So the way we usually do these things, start in the here and now, maybe touch on the new album to start. Your manager, Brendan, was kind enough to give me an advanced listen. So I'm familiar with this, with the tunes, and then maybe a little in the Wayback Machine, kind of how you got from there to here.
Sure.
And then wherever from there, my friend. So yeah, In Plain Sight, November 5th. How is it feeling out there playing the new songs to your audience?
It feels really good. We've got we've been workshopping them all year on stage, and it's starting to feel really, really solid. And the response of the crowds has been great. You know, a lot of people are seeing us for the first time and aren't familiar with the new material. So to see that garner a response like it has is encouraging.
I bet. I have a friend named Doc, a dentist in New York City, who saw you at some festival over the summer, and he was so stoked on the new music, you know, none of which he'd heard before. So it kind of got me curious. And then, of course, you know, listening in, what songs are in the set list from the new album? What are you like using to introduce people to the new batch?
Well, we potentially play anything off of the new record, and including some cuts that didn't make the album, save for the interlude track. But yeah, it's we kind of started with Alameda Apartments and Problems, and we just started chipping away at it, and now we've got everything in rotation.
Awesome. Yeah, I was reading the bio. You're talking a little bit about Alameda Apartments.
And as much as it hurts, it remains to this day that I love her, and that stays just the same. Into the Alameda Apartments. Outside from the border main. Tell me that my new place is haunted. The walls move in the night, and I lie awake waiting for the day.
So I live in Alameda County out here in Oakland.
Yeah.
So, and you had said, you know, you weren't familiar with the name. It just stuck with you. And then you use it obviously to kick off the album. What's the significance there? Like, what is the Alameda Apartments, or Alameda in general? What does that sort of infer or reference in terms of your song?
Well, I don't know. It came from a dream I had, and I just remembered the name of the apartment building from my dream, which is, it's really strange to have that sort of detail in a dream for me. And so it was important for me to write it down at the time. And I've since been reading 100 Years of Solitude by Marquez, and in that book there's an instance where this guy founds a city called Macondo, and they talk about him receiving that name for the city in a dream, and he had never heard the name before. So I just came across that recently, but I was like, oh, well, this isn't without precedent, you know, in human experience. But I now encounter that all over the place, especially in California, as you can imagine. So many things are named
Right.
Alameda, and I kind of like willfully mispronounce it in the song because I didn't even know how it was supposed to be pronounced. But
Right.
here we are.
Yeah, I love it. You know, I love it as an opener, and of course, you know, being that I live here, there's like that kind of connection. But also, just hearing how it's not connected to anything specific, but just a word from a dream that manifests in a song. I think when there's like cool stories and sort of a personal narrative to the artist that, you know, isn't easy for the listener to
to grasp unless they read an article or listen to this podcast. It kind of leaves it open to interpretations, and everybody gets their own thing out of it. And another thing that I found interesting about the narrative to the In Plain Sight album is, your time spent in a church, your creative space there, pipe organs. I was just, astounded by the fact that this music, obviously secular music, but lots of gospel and really, spiritualized music at the same time. I would have never imagined that the creative space was a church. Could you, as much as you're comfortable talking about, like, how did you end up there? I know it's a long, strange trip, but how did you end up on that doorstep and step inside of there and create what became In Plain Sight in that space?
So, yeah, I mean, like, I'm constantly thinking about what a strange and beautiful gift that was to experience. But I inherited a job as an accompanist at this church, St. Peter's UCC, back in 2017, from my friend Dom, who was moving to New York. And I didn't really consider myself qualified because I'm a really poor reader of music. And he was like, you should do this. And at the time I was just really hungry for jobs, basically. And I took the gig, and, for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, I was, an accompanist at this tiny congregation. It's a huge church, but a tiny congregation. There's probably like maximum of 20 people at a given service. And it was just me and a vocalist. I play piano and organ. And I built a really good relationship with the church lady, for lack of a better expression. Her name is Lil Asbury, to which I dedicated the record to her. But yeah, there was a really traumatic breakup I had with my girlfriend in 2019. And I knew I needed to, like, immediately move out of my apartment in order for us both to regain sanity. And I knew that the pastor's residence at St. Peter's was vacant. And I was like so strung out because I had just played my album release party for Changes, and then I had church the next morning. So I like went to bed at 3 a.m. and then woke up and got to church at like 7:30. And I was like, I'm just going to ask if I can live here. Not really knowing what to expect. And, a week later I was moving in. So I made that space my home. I immediately went on tour with the Black Pumas after moving in. And so I was gone for a month, but like I had this desperate feeling that I was going to miss out on an opportunity to utilize the space in a meaningful way, because we're going to be touring so much in 2020. And then, of course, the pandemic occurred. And so like I was really able to dig in, and we started acquiring gear. It was my drummer and I living there, because Lil again just extended the offer for Colin to live there. Because we had the bottom dropped out of our income. So that was very gracious of her. And I started acquiring bits of gear, like an 8-track tape machine and a 16-channel mixing board. And I just started demoing out the record, with all of our equipment in the basement. And Colin would lay down drums. And for the first, by mid-May, my sleep schedule was completely nocturnal, and I was just up writing and recording at night and sleeping during the day. And like I would start a song at like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and Colin and my girlfriend, would go sleep upstairs, and like then by 5 or 6 in the morning I'd have something serviceable, and Colin, I would just like knock on his door and ask if he would come lay down drums on it. So it was like this really bizarre experience, and that extended all through the summer. And Chicago was extremely violent during the George Floyd protests. There were just police cars flying up and down the street outside the church, late at night, and there were just always like flashing lights coming through it. It really felt like, we're in the middle of the Trump presidency. There's a pandemic raging with no end in sight. The city is on fire, and like, there's a curfew, and the only food available is McDonald's and like, the convenience store. And it was just like, what the hell is going on? It was like, but it was great because I was in the church, and like I had everything there that I could ever need to like be engaged, and I don't know. It was pretty surreal, man. I can't even believe it happened sometimes.
Sure. I can imagine, but I can't really. But you paint the picture really well, just to kind of put us there with you. Obviously we all remember that summer. I'm here in Oakland, so the sights and sounds not unlike what you describe in Chicago.
Yeah.
And at the same time, for you to be in this house of worship, whether or not it's your pathway to spirituality or not, just a space dedicated to something bigger than self and faith and a belief in, I guess, the good in humanity, which was so essential during that time to retain some sort of hold on the fact that you believe people are essentially good at the core, because for all the reasons you named and myriad others, whatever your faith was is tested. And and then coupled with, I'm also a nocturnal creator. I get in these manic spaces when the rest of the world is asleep, and it's sort of this liberating place to go to write, or sometimes record the show, whatever. So I understand that, and I understand that sort of covenant, and then you throw that into a church with the environs, and I can only imagine. And I really appreciate that you kind of break it down like that, because you listen to the record, that's the space you were in, with nursing a broken heart. You have no idea what's going to happen with touring or just, society in general. And to be able to mine that space for such a powerful document is just like a testament to the art and the artist. And that's a big reason why I'm so honored to speak with you here, because there's so much profound depth in your records, both of them. And you've been open about the recovery aspect. I was 5 years plus now off pharmaceutical opiates. I'd have to get 12-year dark sojourn that included, deep addiction, jail, all of it. So I also plug into those messages in the music too. But before we maybe open that Pandora's box, you mentioned Chicago. I referenced the Herd. I want to get a little foundation for those less initiated, people who haven't been paying attention for 7 years. How did you find yourself at the piano, and maybe the halcyon days of you gigging around Chicago with blues acts, finding your way, this is my calling, this is my path? Maybe a Cliff Notes on the early years.
Well, yeah, man. I don't know. I can't always say that I thought I was going to end up being a professional musician, even though I was gigging frequently. It didn't seem like a tangible thing, because I was also just distracted by the monkey on my back, during that time. And it's hard to form a coherent picture because I was just sort of I don't know, halcyon days. It's really a great, ironically funny word for it, because it never felt like halcyon days. Sometimes I can remember it there were definitely great times and amazing experiences on the scene in Chicago, especially playing at Rosa's Lounge, which was the blues club I played at like every Tuesday for years. But dude, it sometimes it felt like, you know, crawling through broken glass, you know, doing gigs, jobbing gigs, and it all depended on who I was playing with. But yeah, I was always working a straight job simultaneously, and, you know, kind of listlessly wondering what was going to happen in my life. And then I guess the focus came after my mind cleared up after, you know, putting the booze down and like realizing that, okay, I do have some control over my destiny, you know, if I remain sober. And things started to take a different tack after that, because I could focus, you know, at all. But yeah, I'm grateful to have been in Chicago all those years, because there are so many amazing musicians, and it's just a hardworking scene. You know, I played a lot of gigs with a lot of different types of music, and it was a great education, you know, coming up on that scene for sure. I don't know.
No, I mean, that, you know, Halcyon Days is a double entendre. You know, Halcyon's like a tranquilizer, okay. And it was a daze. And then it's also like a reflection of those back in the days, those good old days, but it's, you know, sarcastic, if you will. So that's kind of where I was coming from with that, is like, yeah, you answered it perfect in the sense it's a blur, and you can't really pinpoint those special nights, because, you know, whether you were drinking or having just caught up in the whirlwind of being a working musician as a young person in a major metropolitan city like Chicago with such a hallowed tradition of blues and R&B. I mean, it's a lion's den on a lot of levels. And then you throw, you know, demons and self-awareness and all that stuff in, and, you know, it's a recipe for, you know, rock and roll, and also, you know, crash and burn. I think you had a taste of both, and the music tells those tales. So I really found the remarkable part of the early story of what I'm familiar with was that, you know, I was introduced to you through like Chris Rogers and Fire Fest, and of course I knew about you through my guys at Silver Rapper, and I was aware of just the Herd, you know, like not Neal Francis per se, but the band out of Chicago. They're killing it. This guy plays with that guy's stuff that would go on down at Jazz Fest. And so I was like hip to what y'all were doing. And then, you know, I was going through my own shit. Actually, that was really when I was in the belly of the beast with my own addictions. But next thing I knew, like, you're out, and the band is made. In essence, I never heard from them again. And fast forward all these years later, or several, you know, I hear you with Changes. I'll never forget. You know, I'd heard the record, and I'd actually seen you perform at the Parish, but I had this, like, I don't want to say come to Jesus, because Jesus isn't for me, but it was like a really powerful moment on a June night in Tahoe in the woods with my fiance and this other couple, and they're huge fans of yours down there in Asheville, and they had been playing your record all weekend, but it was just like a meteor shower, and Changes came on, and, you know, what I had been through.
Yeah, man.
It rocked me. Like, in that moment, I had, like, you know, the tears and the, like, this is medicine moment. And I know that your music affects a lot of people that way. And I've talked to them about it. And yeah, I think that it's not about war stories or anything so much as it's about acknowledging, like, it wasn't just fast forward to changes. Like, there was a lot of darkness and struggling there. Only because I've read about it, and we do talk a lot about recovery on this pod. There have been a number of artists that have shared, and we've even had a couple of recovery-based pods. What was that rock bottom for you? I know you had, like, injuries, and you were kicked out of the band that you basically were the lifeblood of. How did you get there, and, like, what was the, like, that's it, motherfucker, I'm done moment?
Yeah, man. Yeah, thanks for sharing that experience. So just amazing to hear that, man, that you have that connection. But I was like, dude, I talk about this with the guys a lot, because the bass player was in the Herd, Mike Starr. He's in my band now. And our drummer, Colin, was at like every Herd show at a live one, and he's been a homie for like a decade. So, we had a lot, like last night we were just talking about like a show we went to when we were like 20 in Chicago that we were like, we didn't know each other, but we're like, oh yeah, I was there, man. Like, it was raging. But it's funny. Anyway, like, I had gotten myself kicked out of the Herd. And I was living alone, and I sort of had ideations of being accepted back into the band, and in and out of the hospital, drinking, had that injury you were talking about as a result of an alcoholic seizure. That gratefully happened at my mom's house. She was able to call the paramedics, and that was like, I remember my dad visiting me after surgery on my leg, and like, because I had just broken my femur and my hip during that seizure somehow, and he was like, my dad was in the hospital. I was like on all these like painkillers and shit, and I hadn't spoken to my dad in such a long time, and he's like there, and he's like, dude, like, do you want to live to be 30? And I was like, yeah, man. And the gears were really turning, because the writing was really on the wall. Like, there had been so many previous like rock bottoms with trapdoors, as they say, but like this
Right.
was like, I knew things were getting like seriously scary. And I wish I could say I gave up drinking after that, but I went away to rehab, came back, drank a little bit, and then finally, like, I don't know, it seems like almost without my deciding to, I just put one foot in front of the other. Just got like a kind of menial job at UPS store, which was like the perfect job for me at the time, because it was just show up at this time and do this shit. And for like, I was like that for probably 6 or 8 months before I started gigging at all, which wasn't really a problem because nobody was calling me to do gigs at the time, and then just gradually like realized I was in a position to do something with my life, and just started writing again, and here we are.
Yeah, man, I feel that, and I think we've all, well, anybody who's struggled with these kind of demons has a version or 7 of that story. I can think of a moment with my own mom. I can think after I went to jail and had been off the shit for a year plus, I got high again one day. Prince died that day, and that felt like a message from the heavens, if you will, a heavy one at that. So I get that, that doesn't happen overnight, and even your rock bottom doesn't necessarily mean it's day one, but it is sort of this line in the sand where you just have that realization that you just can't live like that anymore.
Right.
And I too have surfed a wave of creativity and good fortune and abundance in the wake of that inferno. So it's just resonates deeply to see you live through that, write the story, sing it, and have it sort of take on this life of its own. Because, I mean, with the guy at UPS, I mean, I had one of those humbling jobs too, right after jail. Would the guy at UPS have imagined that you'd be where you are right now, playing the gigs you're playing, getting the accolades? I mean, wasn't that long ago somebody called you the second coming of Alan Toussaint. It's amazing to see you step into that. So I wanted to maybe shift out of the darkness and into the light.
Running through my life, and you get smaller and smaller inside me, and I'm not living the way I did anymore. Oh no. A lot of people not the same. Some not like me.
Changes change your life. I mean, in so many ways, not just making you, a household name in our music community, a rising star in, the macro sense. I would like to hear from you. Like, how did that record, how was it the turning of the page, and how did your life change in that experience?
Yeah. I don't think I seriously believed anything would come of it. Standing there at the UPS store, just when I was that's when I started, like, really, my gears were turning. I was playing with PJ and Mike again, the drummer and the bass player of the Hurt, respectively, and sort of workshopping material and squirreling away money. I was playing wedding gigs on the weekends and, playing at Kingston Mines, blues gigs, every Wednesday, and just busting my ass, basically. And, like, I didn't have anything going other than I knew I wanted Sergio to record it. So there is, like, a white light moment with regards to instigating this train. I was actually at a new Master Sounds show. I love that band deeply. I was at Park West with some friends of mine, and I was just, like, in the audience. I'm like, how do I get from standing here to being on that stage? And I don't know. I was like, well, no one's going to escort me. Like, I have to sort of build my mechanism to get there. And so I was just like, well, I know Sergio, and I'll reach out to him, see if he's down to record. And I put a date, 3 months away on the calendar. And I was like, well, I got to get my shit together. So started rehearsing with the band, and I had money saved up, and I was just, got the transcriptions made for the horns. And then we had 4 tracks in the bag after that session. And that was one of the instances where, like, I had something, and then a stroke of luck occurred where I ran into the guy who would become my manager at a monophonics show in Chicago. And so like by a stroke of luck, you know, we were acquaintances. We struck up a conversation. I told him that I'd just done some recordings with Sergio, and he had done a record with Sergio with his own band. So like he then became interested in the project because he really liked the tunes, and like having a manager just made it real, period.
Yeah.
You know, and like Brendan, you've interacted with him, he's like the best possible person I could hope for it to be working with. He's just so proactive and wants this to succeed as much as I do. But you know, not to digress, it was just like that. It was like, I don't know, I had to build it. It was like the Field of Dreams thing. It's like, if you build it, he will come. If you build it, he will come. I had to build it before, you know, any sort of anything came to fruition. I had to create it, which was scary because it was costly, and there was no guarantee. But then like once it started getting attention, and like we had the label that was willing to distribute it, and I was like, well, you know, this is actually a career. This is what a career is. It's like, I have an agent, I have a label, I have a manager. Like, this is actually happening, you know? Sometimes it doesn't feel like I really did anything, you know? Sometimes it just feels like I was showing up and putting one foot in front of the other. But it was never an engineered sort of like, all right, first I'm going to record. Then I'm going to hit up Brendan. He's going to be my manager. It's like I could never envision any of that happening the way it did. So that's where like the spirituality comes in for me. Is like, maybe I'm on a track. We could have a 6-hour discussion about free will, but like, I think most of it is just me taking care of myself, being good to others. And that clears the way for me to do the work I need to do. And then that opens doors just through like attitude. And I don't know, man, I'm getting off track, but I don't even remember what you asked. Just like, I have a tendency to ramble.
No, you nailed it. No, you nailed a lot of it, man. There's a lot to unpack there. I was going to finish up with an aho or amen, because that the end of that answer there, we're talking about how you move through life and the energy you put out and what comes back, both tangibly and intangibly. So true, you know, and I love that. But you referenced Sergio a few times, Sergio Rios. I have a lot of fondness for the man. Had a particularly intense musical moment with Orgone at Bear Creek in 2011, and told him so. We struck up a friendship that's, you know, close to, I guess, like a decade now. I mean, when I knew I was doing this interview, I hit him up, you know, but I know a little bit about your relationship just by being friendly with him. And he is a master of aesthetics and vibe and those intangible things that make a record organic and authentic and feel, you know, of a different time without it being like on the nose. You know, it's this real fine line of taste, and I can't say enough. How did you connect with him, and what role does he play in sort of capturing Neal Francis?
Man, I'm so glad Orgone and Sergio, and like,
oh yeah,
seriously, just like, also for me, the greatest live band I've ever seen. Yeah, but I've been talking about Sergio a lot on interviews, and we've become good friends. Like, I knew from the start after doing the Herd record with Sergio that like we were on the same page musically, just in terms of like he has a much greater depth of knowledge in terms of just where he's drawing from, just like a longer history with exploring like crate digging and just getting into the real cutty stuff. But we like a lot of the same stuff, and we like a lot of the same things about production, and he knows how to engineer those things that I like. And so there was like this immediate connection on that level, and a lot of the communication was made easier by the fact that I didn't have to mince words about what we were going for. It's just like Alan Toussaint, 1971. It's like, okay, yeah, so I'm gonna use this on your vocals, I'm gonna use this on your drums. And it's like it made it so much easier to realize that project, because I just knew he would be able to achieve, like I knew he was a meter's nut, so he was gonna like lock in the bass and guitar tones the way they needed to. And he played guitar on that record, which is like, you said it, he's just a master.
And what if happiness isn't just stop trying? Once you give it up, you'll have peace of mind.
And dude, we had such a crazy time making In Plain Sight. It was like, because he flew out, during the pandemic, and the first time he flew out, I got deathly sick the first day he was in the studio recording with us. Not from COVID, I just got like tonsillitis, or it was hands down the sickest I've ever been in adulthood. And like he was downstairs with the band tracking in the basement, and I was upstairs like bedridden, like in and out of consciousness. And we just made a decision to reschedule the session. And like he flew back to LA, and then 6 weeks later came back to Chicago. And those were long ass days, man. He's such a hard worker. He, like, a Sergio day is like minimum 13 hours. And then it inevitably becomes nocturnal. And especially the vocal sessions, it was just me and him and like the tape machine. And like, dude, we were just like looking at each other, and like, dude, the joke vocabulary became like, you know how like when you're in a band or you're like hanging out with someone, like,
Yeah.
all you need to do is like make a little noise or like look at someone a certain way, and it'll just be hysterical, because like you develop this vocabulary of humor. Like, I don't know, I feel like we're just close as two people can be, while still loving each other. It's just it was an amazing experience working with him again on this, especially in the circumstances. I think we spent 21 days total just tracking, between the dub sessions and the band sessions. So he's just a huge was one of those people in my life that really taught me a lot, so I'm so grateful for him.
Yeah, that's important. Well, first of all, I know what you mean with like the super inside stuff where you don't really need to talk. It's just you both observe the same thing, and it's hilarious. I get that. And I think like a lot of artists in their lifetime don't get that producer artist connection. And they might, it's a special thing when you think back in history where, like, you know, when an artist and a producer are so simpatico that it just launches them onto a run of records that is a reflection of both of their, you know, genius. And I love the fact that, you know, it was Orgone, and I love Master Sounds. Eddie's been on the pod. We love Color Red, of course. Like, that lineage, that community seeing something in you, even in your darkest hours of need, recognizing that you had something, and when you were ready to bring it to the table, like, they would facilitate it however they could. You know, I think that specifically to Sergio and you know, other collaborators, recognizing that, you know, whether it's the Meters inviting you out to jam or Derek Trucks on your record, I mean, these are bold font artists, generation defining artists that want to make music with you, you know. So that in itself is just a testament to the power of what you're creating with Sergio and others. I'm good friends with Chris Galbuta too.
Oh,
I know
man.
you worked with him. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna hit them all off, you know, like Chris and I, you know, fish nerds and friends from like Suwannee Hulaween, and he told me a while ago he was going to be writing with you. Talk a little bit about that partnership, you and Galbuta. It was another very special human.
Dude, that's another guy that was like, it's like the first minute we met.
Same, yeah.
I just like knew we were going to be really good friends. And I spent like, he usually does, dude, he's so, from what he tells me, like, he usually, his writes are like an hour and a half to 2 hours. We spent like 8 hours together writing problems. And, you know, it was our first write. I was just so proud of the song that we walked away with. And he has such a gift for lyrics. And I've had the good fortune to, you know, be involved with, you know, David Shaw's project. He's another just really good friend. And he's been a supporter since the very beginning. But man, like, the best hang, Chris Galbuta. Like one of the funniest people I've ever met, but just also one of the most talented. Just like, seriously, like, mind-blowingly talented musicians I've ever met. And I really love him. So grateful that that song is on the record too.
Lord knows I've got the problem. I don't need one more. Lord knows I've got the problem. I don't need one more. All this crazy talk kinda got me thinking. Maybe I'm the only one I'm achieving. What I need to do is open up my eyes. Someone like you lives inside my heart. Till I come to my senses in the night.
He is quite talented and has a knack for song and subtle melody, and just less is more. He's got his thumb on the pulse of something special. And you referenced David Shaw, and I think that when I was talking about lineage, I was even thinking with David, because it's the herd revivalist thing with PJ, and of course, you know, the dual bills over the years, and David wrote. Does he sing on the song?
He wrote it, yeah.
Okay, and that's the same song Derek's on too, right?
Yes.
Tell me what you find. Problems that you have aren't the ones on your mind, and you can't stop the rain. It's always coming down, always gonna fall, but you're not gonna drown.
So how did that magic come to be? I mean, obviously you have a long-rooted relationship with David, but did he bring you a fully formed song? Did you guys write it together? And where does Derek get into the mix?
So the Can't Stop the Rain song, it was Jazz Fest 2019, and I was in New Orleans for a couple of days. Like, it was like this weird thing where I kept trying to leave, and then I'd be out at a late night show, and then I'd wake up at 1, and I couldn't drive back to Chicago starting at 1 p.m. So I was just like staying day after day. And then eventually David invited me over to do a write, and we wrote the song together. David had the hook sort of in his back pocket. He's just got, a whole notebook full of banging hooks. And, we were just messing around with it. The song came together. And then we basically just had a voice memo of us playing it solo acoustic piano and singing. I went back to Chicago. I recorded a demo of it that was sort of more to my own flavor. And then, of course, for the recording session, we were in isolation and produced the track as a 4-piece. And then my friend Jesse Lauder heard it. And he does production with Derek and Susan. And he was like, "Oh, Derek would sound great on this." And I was like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so too." Not even realizing that Jesse actually had the power to make that happen, because he's such a humble guy. You just peel back the onion with him. He sent Derek the track, and he liked it enough to grace us with his guitar playing. And that was that was I think that was one of 2 elements that were recorded digitally, just because we had to bounce it to him to record in Jacksonville. But I got a chance to speak on the phone with him the day he recorded his part. And it was just such a humble and kind person. And also the greatest at what he does. So it was inspiring to talk to him, just sort of be conscious of that attitude and wanting to bring that to my interactions with people.
But you're not gonna drive, no, no, no.
A magical song, and I think knowing the roots and the connectivity, a lot of it really takes me back to Spirit of Suwannee Music Park, my introduction to the revivalists. The Herd ever play Bear Creek?
We did, yeah.
I thought maybe in 13 or 14, a vague recollection. Like I said, those were fuzzy times for me too. But so when I think of this sort of lineage, even folding Gel Buda in there, or Michael Berg for that matter, the Suwannee has this, it's ley lines of something bigger than music, and what comes out of that space, has followed me out here to Oakland and everywhere else I've been in between. So I am so stoked. First time I'm going to see you since that Paris show at the House of Blues in New Orleans, however, 3 years ago. We'll be at Hulaween in a few days.
You're going to be there?
Yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Yeah, I'll be at Hulaween.
I'm so stoked. Yeah. Dude, I actually, when we got on here, I wondered if I recognized you, because we were there in 2013 at the Christmas trailer thing that Chris had set up out there, and it was just such a hilarious time in my life for many reasons, but just that was one of those formative experiences for me too. I can't remember if it was Hulaween that year or Bear Creek, but
It was
like,
Bear Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Master Sounds were playing as well, and like we sat in, and dude, I was just a mess. But like you said, like this record is also just, I almost had that realization as you were speaking about it. It's just like all of these really, really important people to me are on this record and featured on this record, and it's so special because of that.
And the fact that it's not some industry shit.
Right.
It's not like through who knows who. I mean, sure, the engineer that could have been Derek's ear, but these are relationships that you've cultivated over time, and a lot of miles between everybody. So I think it speaks to the power of the relationships and the music that, you know, these folks came together to facilitate this whole, you know, second record for you, you know, on the heels of such a successful and really just, it's a scintillating listen, Changes. And like I said, I've had some really deep moments with it, but I wanted to finish with my favorite song on your new album, is Asleep.
Thanks, man.
And I really love the Asleep, and then it's like an acronym, or the BDLV.
BNYLV, yeah.
Right.
Bunny
so
Love.
That one, oh, right. Bunny Love. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a mouthful to kind of get it out. It's just the letters. So Bunny Love. Thank you. So yeah, just wanted to finish there. And hard to put, I'm a words guy, and it's hard to put it into words, but something about where you go with Asleep, when I put it on the headphones and I close my eyes and it's just me and the music, it's as close as I get to like that weightless, numb high that I used to chase.
Oh damn, man!
It is like opiate bliss.
It's not our job to ever know when it's finally time to go. Sleep in the arms of another. Dream of me, wasting hours. Sleep in the arms of another.
It just takes me to a weightless space of like feels, you know, just really amazing. And kind of with that comes all the reflections, and obviously the lyrics betray a sentiment of sorts. And then the shift of gears into Bunny Love, and it's like, and I feel fucking good about it. And life is fucking good, and let's dance. It is just real. It's like bookends the emotional spectrum, and also is a journey. And I love the whole record, but that segment is everything, man. So
Thank you, dude.
can you talk about that song pairing? Did you line it up when you're sequencing it? Were you like, all right, now I'm going to make them cry and then I'm going to make them dance?
I don't know if it was that. I don't know if it was engineered quite like that. The sequence, like everything, sort of came together gradually, and was. It just felt like it congealed at a certain point. It was like, oh yeah, this is of course how it has to be. But no, you know, it's interesting. I'm really glad that we're talking about Asleep, because that song, I'm very proud of that song. And also, like, I wrote Bunny Love and Asleep the same week. I think 2 nights in a row. I was just like, I was on one, you know, like in the studio at night. Asleep came together. I was like playing around with like this sort of like Beethoven inspired thing, and my girlfriend was sitting there and she was like, that's really cool. And like I was like, oh, she thinks this is cool, then I should explore this idea, you know. And so she like went to sleep, and I like tracked the entire song, including the lyrics, and it was like so that is such a deeply personal song, man, about like being in a new relationship and still thinking about the old one, and that transition, and like, you know, hopefully the hope of things being okay. But yeah, Bunny Love, I think I wrote the night before, actually, or 2 nights before, and that was just something that, like, it was one of those instances where, like, I'll never forget just like putting that together. I'm like, this is fucking awesome. And I just like knocked on Colin's door at like 3 or 4 in the morning, just like, hey man, you want to track drums on this? He's like, oh hell yeah, like this is like, and we were just like jamming to it like into early in the morning, like.
These last forever. True love never lasts.
I'm smiling so hard because I relish that experience making those demos, and I really hope I can release the demos are all on a single 8-track half-inch reel that I my goal is to like somehow release that, because it's just like very stream of consciousness sounding, like there's all these little like synth interludes, and there's a drum machine sort of like holding everything together, because I would start tracking to this drum machine from like 1959, and like that's included on every single demo. It's very strange. But a long story short, yeah, I'm really like, that suite is very it's my favorite part of the record too, I think, and certainly live I really enjoy playing those. And the guys have stepped up to the plate in terms of vocals. Like, we're all starting from square one as far as vocals are concerned, and they've just been busting their asses, you know, so I'm proud of them.
I can't wait to hear whatever you have in store. Spirit Lake, I think it's like around, it's late, it's like after midnight. It's going to be a dance party.
Hell yeah.
Unfortunately, oh yeah, well, Bear Creek was the coldest festival of all time, so we cut our teeth down there, bundled up. I mean, I even like it cold when I go to Suwannee. It kind of just takes me back to the halcyon days, if you will. But yeah, you know, you're playing out here at Outside Lands. You know about the Neal Francis debacle? There's another Neal Francis. They're a duo, Neil Frances. They're playing right after you on the same stage at Outside Lands. So it's Neal Francis.
Yeah, we're gonna rumble, man.
I know. It's just like a whole thing. Everyone's like, what's up with the Neal Francis debacle? They're just worried about people getting it wrong, going to the wrong set, maybe thinking one or the other.
I'm not, you know, I've ridden the wave of being worried about it. I actually, I like what they do, because, dude, I was sitting in a restaurant recently, and like, there's like this like super cool, like down tempo, like kind of electro thing happening on the speakers, and I was like, what is this? I Shazammed it. I was like, oh, this is the other Neal Francis. And like, I was like, damn, this is pretty sweet, you know. And I don't know how they view things, but I feel like there's been instances where their fans have come to my show and then left converted, and I can only hope that the same thing maybe happens to them, and the cross-pollination will benefit both of us. But nevertheless, I look forward to meeting them in San Francisco, which is their turf.
Right.
So, you know, we'll see how it goes, but I got a bigger crew. So
Unfortunately, I'll be at Suwannee, but it's going to be a vibe, like the double Neal Francis worlds colliding, or should I say coalescing. So Yeah, I just thought I wanted to hear your thoughts on it because it's a lot of conversation about it out here
There's
in the.
absolutely there's no animosity whatsoever. And
Yeah, of course not.
It's really funny that they like arrived at the name Neal Francis. Just, I don't know, like creating a band name is so difficult and circuitous, and like to them just arriving at a name that happened to be my name is so random and hilarious. But also like, maybe there's a situation where there can be a Neal Francis meets Neal Francis show or collaboration on a track. Like I want that to be real. I think because I can hear I think we dig a lot of the same stuff at the end of the day,
Yeah, like source material wise. Right. And like you said earlier, if you build it, they will come. So you spoke it aloud, let the collaboration manifest.
Let it be heard here first. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're really taking the world by storm, one room at a time. And man, I'm so stoked to see you. I'm so grateful for this hour. If it feels right down the road, next record, we could do it again if you're so inclined. But I am just thrilled to get to know you, dude, and to hear a little bit about the music and the man. And I hope that my listeners enjoy it as much as I have.
Likewise, B, man, it's been a great time talking to you, and I can't wait to hang in person at Hulaween.
Yes, indeedy. Want to say thank you and a deep bow of gratitude to my man, Neal Francis. Feel like we're friends now. I rolled up to that interview cold. We never met, and I was only marginally familiar with his story through what I'd read and, of course, the music. So it just rocks when you connect with someone on that level. And it kind of starts as one of those like industry album promo press vibes. And over the course of the conversation will sort of transform, or should I say evolve, into more of a conversation between new friends and a free exchange of ideas. And obviously we merely scratched the surface in just under an hour. So much more I'd love to chat with Neal Francis about. He's got so much more music on the way and so much in the rearview mirror that we didn't even touch on. But I do think we both came away feeling good, and I hope that it happens again. You can check him out on all the streaming services or just throw Neal Francis into the search bar of YouTube, and there's tons of goodies. I'm going to have the record release party from Rosa's in Chicago up on the Up Full Life Mixcloud. Maybe I'll bury the link in the show notes. But anyway, that show came my way, and I'm uploading it in the next couple of days. So long as that's still kosher, you can listen to the record release party from Neal Francis in plain sight at Rosa's in Chicago, late night on Friday, November 5th. You're hearing 6 to 4. Yep, that's the George Benson tune, classic, by Neal and his crew from this past summer. And now I'm going to shift into a little bonus section with regard to Suwannee Hulaween. Where do I start here? So we saw Neal perform right after Lettuce at Suwannee Hulaween. Come on. And it was with Eric Krasno in the assembly into Lettuce with Kraz and Sam. You can read all about this in my Hulaween article. And then came Neal Francis head-to-head with Kamani. So we caught most of Neal, most of Kamani. Actually, we had Greenhouse Lounge, then Eric Krasno in the assembly, then Lettuce. Then we rumbled, bumbled, stumbled over to Neal Francis on the Spirit Lake stage, and they were dressed Hulaween appropriate as the Golden Girls. Neal had the cocktail dress on, old lady style, with some undergarments that were of the time and age appropriate. Great Neal Francis set, absolutely raging, right into Kamani. And like I said, you can check it out on my report on Live for Live Music, Hulaween 2021 reunion. It was on many levels. And that day that ended with the Neal Francis Kamani 1-2 punch. And really, then we went out into the woods to a sound camp and listened to super heady, old school dubstep till the wee hours. But that day began with a phenomenal workshop, speech, talk, call it what you will, at the Oasis Tent, which is kind of like a burgeoning arm of the Hulaween experience that's rooted in a lot of what goes on out here in the West Coast festival scene, Lightning in a Bottle or Symbiosis, or on a smaller scale, an Enchanted Forest or Lucidity, where there's like an educational arm and there's an experiential arm that isn't music or big art or anything of that nature, but is more, get learned up, have an experience that's like filling your head and your heart and your mind with something bigger than just raging or dancing or having a entertainment experience at the festival. So I'm a big proponent of this, and I know my friend Joanne, who I've been down with at Suwannee for many years, Joanne Isaac, is really dedicated to facilitating this type of programming. And what do you know? One of my best friends on planet Earth, Scott T, from Jacksonville, Florida. I lived down there for 5 years, and I made many, many friends in the 904 Duval. And Scott T is at the top of the list. He's like a brother to me. And you may remember, if you're a dedicated listener, that he recited a poem just before Rising Appalachia performed in St. Augustine, Florida. And why would you know that? Because I played that poem on the Ruben Sadowski Goyaki Yerba Mate episode, because Ruben was tour managing Rising Appalachia at the time. And that's who I asked permission. Could my friend Scott T kick this poem that he'd written on the heels of experiencing Rising Appalachia at Jazz Fest in New Orleans just a few days earlier? That's just like a microcosm of who this dude is, Scott T, poet laureate and sort of cosmic Charlie of my crew and my life, and is a special human being. And he developed it's like 30 plus minute talk about the history and spirit of the Suwannee and the mysticism and the natives and the vegetation and how indigenous people communed in the area where we now dance and laugh and sing and cry and do all the things. And again, I'm going to get married there. So naturally, this was of great interest to me. Of course, because my guy was putting it on, but also because, this is stuff I want to know about. And, there was about 24 of us in there. Nobody left, but people kept rolling in. And my man had all of us in the palm of his hand, like he can do, whether he's, doing poetry slam or sitting behind the piano on some Dylan-esque romantic fairy tale of lore, or I now know he can do TED Talk like a motherfucker. Again, that whole magical day of all of that very, very special music, among other only at Suwannee occurrences. That day started with this talk from my man Scott T. So that was a long intro, but I wanted you all to know this isn't just some dude. This is some dude that's very special to me and very special to many. That's why I'm going to play his talk in its entirety. Before we get to the Vibe Junkie Jam, we are going to hear Scott T. Live and direct from Suwannee Hulaween, Friday the 29th, Spirit of Suwannee Music Park, Oasis Tent. Shout out Joanne Isaac. Shout out Saira Anderson. Thank you for making this kind of programming possible. You know, hopefully there'll be more of the same next year. I know Mitchell Gomez from Dance Safe spoke later that evening. They had a tent there right next to the Oasis tent. So this is progress. And Hula Cats, Berg, Paul, powers that be, if you're listening, this is good energy. This is good education. And on behalf of a number of hooligans who seek something deeper than the rage, please, more Oasis Tent, more money for the budget, more programming, deeper dives. We're just scratching the surface, and you're going to hear why with this Scott T talk. We'll hear a little bit of this, Neal, and then you'll hear Scott T, and then I'll be back with a song or two to wrap things up, episode 51. Thanks for bearing with me. As you can tell, I'm excited. Neal Francis, Scott T, Hulaween. You know, we are in my neighborhood, y'all.
I don't love you cause I want to. I don't love you cause I have to. I love you cause I need you. I'm lucky that I have you. I love you cause I need you. But I couldn't live without your love.
All right, what's happening, y'all? All right. Welcome to How to Give Bad Advice and Gain Clout. My name is Scott. No, I'm just kidding. This is the history and tradition and mystery of the Spirit of the Suwannee. It's Friday. We're here. Y'all probably got here Thursday. Maybe earlier than that. Maybe today. We have the baptismal cleansing of raining all day Thursday. Settled the dust. The weather's perfect. Things are unfolding nicely. Everyone do okay last night? Everyone got enough sleep? Yep. Feel like you're prepared for full throttle the rest of today and the rest of tomorrow? All the way through? Good. My name is Scott. I am no authority on anything, and I don't actually know anything either. But I love the Spirit of the Suwannee. I love this place, and I really enjoy talking about it. So that's what I'm going to do. We're in Live Oak, Florida. This area is just inherently mysterious. In the mid to late 1800s, it was a renowned healing center. Right across the street from the park, when you exit the park, it's called Suwannee Springs. You go right across the street into that back road right there, and you can see the remnants of the old bathhouse where people would come from all over the world to soak in the spring water that feeds the river and heal all sorts of ailments. There was a major tourist industry in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Stephen Foster in the mid-1800s was writing a song, and it's one of the most famous melodies in the world. Da 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 da. And he had all the words written except for the name of the river. He had way down on the river. He couldn't figure out what to call it. He went and asked his brother for help. His brother didn't know. They pulled a book off of an atlas off the shelf, and as the story goes, he just kind of moved his finger around the page and eventually landed on Suwannee. What do you think about Suwannee? Perfect. And it was put in the song. And I think that song has a lot to do with kind of giving people permission to dream and to think wondrously about somewhere. Oh, the Suwannee River, okay, there. Though I also feel the place is inherently on its own magical enough. But I'm attracted to the combination of like divination and dumb luck. there's something about the space between the two where a certain kind of magic unfolds, and that this place attracted that one way or another. Way before that, unfortunately we don't know as much as I wish we knew about the people that lived here hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But what we do know is that we think that Suwannee was a Timucuan word for echo, but there's another theory that Suwannee is like a play on Little St. John, because the St. John's River is east of here through Jacksonville. So we're not 100% sure where the word Suwannee even comes from, but it's probably one of those two things. And the Timucuan believed that live oak trees were actual manifestations of the tree of life. That it was the cosmic life tree brought into being, embedded in live oak trees, which are plentiful around here. And the city's named after them. And they also held the river in a very sacred way. They thought of the river as not only sacred to them, but sacred to the sun god. And there was a Timucuan myth about how the moon would put colors into the earth and the sun would draw the colors out of the earth. And it was the land around the river, which if you don't know, you can go down here, make a left on River Road, about a mile down, there's a big beach with the Suwannee River on it. I recommend checking it out. So, as far as the park is concerned, at some point, I'm not exactly sure. I've heard it was during the New Deal with the Roosevelt administration, and I heard that it was from during the Carter administration. At some point, the federal government provided money to the state of Florida to build a park. It ended up being here. They put in the most basic amount of infrastructure, and then the money ran out and it just sat here doing nothing. And there was a family, the Cornetts in Kentucky, that would host bluegrass festivals, Gene and Bob Cornett, and they really wanted a place to hold music festivals year-round, especially in the winter and the fall. It gets cold. It gets very cold in Kentucky. And they happened upon this place, and my understanding is no one had done any maintenance here on anything in decades. It was like overgrown quasi-wilderness. And they made an agreement with the county, and they took over the park and started making it happen. At first they held smaller events in the late 80s and early 90s, like clogging and the bluegrass stuff. And then in the 92 or 93, Willie Nelson played here and brought a bunch of people. And then through the 90s, you had the Horde Tour, the first Further Tour with the remaining members of the Dead after Garcia died, and the spring and fall bluegrass and folk festivals continued as well. And then through the years, all sorts of other festivals. One of my favorites was the Suwannee Festival in April, that started in the mid-2000s and went until 2014 or 15. Bear Creek during that time was like late night jazz fest in the woods. Just an incredible festival, and tons of other ones that came and went. And oftentimes people would come here without really caring what bands are playing, because there's something going on here, right? You're all here. So what is really interesting is that amphitheater stage, Jean Cornett said that she saw that stage in her dream, and then sketched it out, described it to someone that could actually illustrate it to get it permitted to be built. And the church over there, if you walk down this road, there's a tiny wooden church over there that she also saw in a dream. And I really like this idea of taking things that first only exist in your dreams and your imagination and bringing them into being. And that's what this place is. Two people had a dream, an idea. What if we had a place we could have music festivals all the time? And they made it happen. My understanding is it was a major endeavor when they decided to do it, and it was like, okay, let's do it. It wasn't like there was no risk involved. They laid it on the line to make something happen. And it's still happening. and we get to enjoy it. And it's an incredible thing. Also nearby here, about 10 miles up the river, is White Springs, where Stephen Foster Memorial Park is. I forgot to mention, and it's said that when warring tribes of Timucuan were having disputes and warring with one another, they could actually go to that place and bathe and enjoy the river and not kill each other. And similar to that, I think there's a lot of areas in life where everyone knows there's 10. I mean, I bet there's 5 different things all of us could disagree over with everyone else. But we're kind of here, just like doesn't matter. You know, like there's the better thing is like, oh, okay. And then all that other stuff just like kind of washes away. And that this place here, like that kind of thing was happening here before this park was ever here. Like I'm suggesting that there's something significant geographically about this area that is interesting. And there's a quote from the this is a quote from 1895 by Opie Reed. A scene may be described, but a condition must be felt. And this place is a conditioned atmosphere of velvet, silken breeze. Here nature has softened her accents, yellowed the clouds which elsewhere would be black, and the bird which flew from the earth to escape the cold forgot his harsher notes. When the air was so still, the Spanish moss hung motionless. The faint roar of railway could be heard far away, the low of the 19th century echoing. And that's in a book called The Suwannee River, a Romance. I think it's a play, actually. And in 1936, Irving Caesar wrote a song called Is It True What They Say About Dixie? And the second verse to that song is it true what they say about Suwannee? Is a dream by that stream so sublime? Do they laugh? Do they love like they say in every song? If it's true, that's where I belong. So this place is my friend said the other day, a magical magnifier. There's magical things inherent in life and in nature that this place magnifies. And I've been coming here since 2008, at least once a year, usually at least twice a year, and something about it just keeps bringing me back. In my own personal journey, I mean, I've had some of the best nights of my life here, and I've had some of the loneliest nights of my life here. There's something about the condition of this place where there's a freedom to play, a freedom to do what you want. There's no, I mean, you get a schedule when you walk in, but like no one's telling you how to carry yourself. You want to hang out at your campsite the whole time, you can. If you want to see every note of music possible, you can. If you want to hang out in the casino all day, you can. You know, lose your soul at blackjack, see how it feels, right? You can do whatever you want, and that there's something about that condition that is special to festivals, period. That there's the Greek philosopher Pythagoras and I think it was Epictetus talked about life is a festival, and that the festival environment is a good reflection, a nice reflection of life, because you can come here and so many people are here for different reasons. People are here for different reasons. And in ancient Greece, the festivals that would happen where there would be sporting events and poetry events and, artistic events and things like that, the events were designed with ancient Greek gods in mind. And they were designed so a person could go to the event, completely lose themselves, and have a blast, and have zero cognizance of the myth that the event is trying to celebrate or tap into. And because the event was designed with that in mind, the person that comes in and just completely loses themselves and has a blast is still affected by that without even knowing it. And that everything that happens here is affected by the daring dream of Gene and Bob Cornett to make this place happen. And the environment of festivals lends themselves to that. I consider it's like an expressive spirituality that it's the real, the environment lends itself to actual transcendence, which is what churches and institutions and dogma gets built around. But actual transcendence precedes dogma and precedes institutionalization. And I wonder if that's what happens here. But it's not something anyone can like make a thing about. There's no flag, right? It's like, I always feel like what happens here is the perfect example of what I would want represented in a flag that I could be like, aha, that's the symbol of this thing that encompasses all the goodness of nature's creativity and collaboration and newness, never-ending newness. But there is no flag. If you tried to make it into a flag, it would almost cheapen it. And it's like the place is the flag itself. And each of us has our own integral connection to the vitality of the essence of the magic of this place. And the way that we connect is like weaving together the tapestry that is the flag, but it's like a living representation, you know? And the world is in a super weird place. You know, it almost feels like old, dead structures that we live in are crumbling and turning into ashes. And in a way, sometimes that it seems like, well, the fire is totally gone out. Like, what is happening? But you can blow the ashes away, and under that is a burning ember that can never be extinguished. And I think that that's what happens here. When you have fun and you throw yourself into an environment of freedom and you just kind of see what happens, and you're in a world where like there's entirely other worlds right around the corner at all times. And you can go from this stage to that stage and see a completely different style of music, or stumble into someone's camp and you're just like, what is going on here? You know, like that happens here. And it also happens elsewhere. Like, what happens here is special, but it's also no big deal, and it's not exclusive to here. But I think the difference is, you know, like the Burning Man scene. I myself have never been, but I'm very close with many people who've been several times, and some of whom have been here too. And speaking about it with them, the beauty of what happens at Burning Man is the desert doesn't care that you're there, and it doesn't remember you when you leave. And so all that's there is the beauty of people in a free, playful environment, and the beauty of what comes out of that co-created collaboration in a vacuum. And it's, I mean, I think it's what life's all about, ultimately. And that happens here, but here, there's trees, there's roots, there's groundwater, there's crystals in the earth that care, that are happy we're here, that remember us, and invite us, and aid us, and assist us. When I'm here, I tend to have easier access to an intuitive level of thinking and pattern processing, information processing, where, as a result, strange, synchronistic things just occur casually, whether it's like running into the person you just thought about, coming around the corner and being lockstep with someone that's dressed in like the exact same costume you are, as though like you rehearsed it, like trying to time out, like just everything. But it's also, you know, tragic stuff has happened here. People have driven their golf carts into the river and died. Someone has tripped and fell and drowned in the lake, right? And like, it's very sad, but it's like not all. It's a whole ecology. It's a whole system. It's a whole thing where it's all there, you know. And within that, there's all these different tunnels of like the times people can have. Some people are here just like straight hustling all weekend, going campsite to campsite. Some of you, like the pizza guys down there, they bring in this huge oven and work their asses off while they're here, and it's great. And to make this happen, a lot of people have to work their asses off. For you to be here for 4 days, you probably have to work your ass off to have this time to travel here from who knows where you traveled from. I mean, it's not all just like fluffy clouds and rainbows. There's like mud and dirt and discipline and precision and work that goes into these types of spaces. And life is like a festival, but it's like these, I'm trying to say, that when you come here, it's like, do you come here with a drained battery and being here recharges you, and then when you leave, you just immediately begin to like decrease what you gained, and then you come back to this or a situation like this and you do it. Is it like that, or is what you tap into here a natural thing that's always available to you, and when you're here it's just less obfuscated? You know, you can trade in the conflict and confusion of the world generally and gain the compassion and camaraderie of sharing in this co-created heritage that we are a part of. There's a beautiful place. This is all of your secret bonus mission of the weekend, okay? There's a place called the Mother Treehouse. If you go all the way down to River Road and make a left, go down until you see the Grand Hall, which is a big building. Make a right, go behind that along the river, and you'll see signs for the Mother Treehouse. There's a guy there named Eric. Tell him Scott sent you, and he takes people up into this treehouse. And the treehouse was built in honor of Jean Cornette, and it was completed like very close to when she passed away. And there's an incredible story about the treehouse itself. I won't spoil for you, but it's an amazing place. And I recommend you check it out. And in there's a painting by Johnny Dame, who's painted a lot of the murals you can find around the park. And on it, it says, a community is more than a place on a map. It is a place of the spirit. It is a place of ideas and of thoughtful action. A place where the preservation of culture and heritage is the responsibility of each citizen. And we're all a part of that community, but it's a community of sharing ideas, right? Like the Cornettes wanted a place to have festivals year round. And Bob Cornette was an educator and was a super avid advocate for education, and constantly was reading and learning about new things and studying things. And some of the best conversations I've ever had here are about like new ideas. There's like a peer-to-peer spiritual community here, where when I talk to someone about topic A, I'm the expert and I'm teaching them something. And I talk to someone else about topic B, they're the expert and I'm learning something brand new. Or two people are having a conversation and they're both experts and they're both exploring a brand new idea that demands exploration, that the fate of humanity depends on. That's how new ideas come. The world is in a bad way. We are in desperate need of miraculous innovation. And that miraculous innovation is all throughout human history. And it's born of people talking to each other and hanging out and shit. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And communicating and talking. And there's something about being here where all the weird shit of the world kind of easily melts away, where you're free to talk to people. I mean, I feel like I learned how to talk to people by doing it here, right? Just turning to somebody like, what's up? How are you doing? Cool shirt, you know, like, what's going on? What's happening? Next thing you know, you're discovering a new energy in the lineage of fire and electricity that can be harnessed by man in service of illumination and communication, and you're talking to a tree that's talking back to you. You know, it's like, what? You know, it feels normal. Okay, cool, right? But my point is that when you leave here, you can take the things that you learn from here and do them elsewhere. That I don't think what happens here is a recharging of a battery. I think what happens here is a fanning of the flame, a fanning of the fire, a fanning of the burning embers that you have to apply elsewhere. You know? That's what I think is happening here. And if you can make that shift, it changes how you feel. Leaving suddenly isn't like, ugh, I have to go to work on Monday or Tuesday. That becomes less prevalent. There's less of a sense of leaving more of a sense of like sailing because you're reconnected and retuned in. Yeah, the first. So I'll share like just personal thoughts, I guess, and then we'll open it up. First time I ever came here was in 2008, and I had no idea where I was. I just plopped my tent down right over there. It's like right where Spirit Lake is. I didn't know if I was close to the stages. I didn't know if I was away from the stages. I had no idea. Turns out I was like the perfect spot. And I was just, I remember being like, wow, this place is cool. And everyone around me was like, this place is so special. You had no idea. But everyone tried to say what it was. And then this guy that was like straight out of central casting for like mystic native person goes, this place is a metaphysical vortex of transformation. Okay. And he's right. Recently I told a friend of mine, the infamous sexual manatee, who, if you're a VIP golf cart rider, you may be lucky enough to have him as your driver. I told him I was giving this talk, and, he's a funny guy. He was like, I would describe the park as the most glorious trailer park. And he's right too, right? Like, it's important not to, when you come across something special, it's important to not, like, try to garner some sort of exclusivity. Try to garner, like, this place is special, and I'm special because of my connection to it. And then turning people like, let me tell you about this place, and I'm the one that's gonna be the one that connects you to it. And, it's like, something about that never really works out. But when I first came here, it reminded me of this place called RV City, which in Jacksonville right now this weekend is the Florida Gators and the Georgia Bulldogs. They play a game in Jacksonville every year. It's called the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It's 80,000 people in a football stadium, split right down the middle, orange and blue on one side, red and black on the other side. It's pretty cool. And people say, oh, people treat football like religion. And it's like, well, the conditions for a transcendent experience are present at a football game. Impossible things can happen. I've seen the Jaguars win a game at that stadium. It's unbelievable, okay? Someone's going to tackle someone, and it's like, it's going to happen. Breaks the tackle, scores a touchdown. Woo! And it's funny, those experiences are similar to experiences I've had at concerts. A jam breaks, there's no way it's going to come back together. And it does. There's something about that. It's interesting to happen at the same time. My point is, first time I came here, it reminded me of RV City. And when I was a little kid, my parents' friends' parents would camp their RV next to the stadium where all the other RVs were. And it was like, we're going to go to RV City on Friday. I'm like 5 or 6 years old. I don't know what that means, but like, I could tell my parents were like, this is fun, we're going, it's going to be cool. Okay, let's see what that is. And I just remember being moved by, like, the sense of merriment, the sense of, like, fun. And it was it never seemed as fun and as cool all the other times I went throughout my youth and adolescence. But the first time I came here, it reminded me of that first time I went there. And because, all the RVs and just the sense, it's kind of like, we're all partying, right? It's kind of like tailgating. But there's no singular event where there's like winners and losers. But the same level of like living, mythical manifestations occur. Greatness, actual greatness occurs in musical performances and artistic creations and performances. And where was I going with that? I guess it's like, this place everything isn't for everyone. So I know some people that know about this place and love this place, and they're going to the game. They're not coming here. I don't understand. But like, that's totally okay. That's totally fine. So it's like, not getting caught up in this special exclusiveness of whatever it is that works for you. But I personally feel that what happens here is vital and very important, and what the world is in desperate need of. And also that what happens here does echo. It reverberates, right? The word Suwannee is a Timucuan word for echo. And what happens here reverberates. And the spirit of the Suwannee Music Park, if you play with the etymology of all those words, this place, park, can be brought back to like Old French for paradise, Suwannee meaning echo, spirit of the Latin spiritus meaning to breathe, breathing, and music meaning the sciences of the muses. And there's 9 muses and they cover everything: painting, music, literature, poetry, epic poetry, all of that stuff. So this place really is a paradise where the echoes of the sciences of the muses breathe. It's a living thing, and we are a part of a living tradition that we are creating, and we're in the thick of creating it, and we're not at the point where it can be looked at and be like, aha, so that's what's happening here. All I have to really say is like, what? Like, what's happening here? Something is happening here, but I don't know what it is necessarily. I can riff on it and play with it, but I can't succinctly sum it up, other than I recognize that it's the percolation of the creativity and collaboration and newness of nature. So what I would like to do is, if anyone would like to share anything, if you want to ask me a question, you can, but I'm more interested in if anyone thinks of like a really far out or weird synchronistic experience they've had here they would like to share, or if while I was saying anything, you thought about anything really interesting, I wonder what that is.
Yep, that's how they did it. After playing for about an hour on the very last set of Suwannee Hulaween, Sunday evening, I guess Roosevelt Collier played late night, but the last set on the big stage and the last proper set of the whole festival, Khruangbin, amazing performance, stunning really, and I've been a fan for a while, but they leveled up on the big stage. Probably the best closing set in Hulaween history, in my opinion. They just really nailed it with Jungle played right before them. Anyway, Khruangbin left the stage for 5 full minutes, built the suspense with the Michael Myers pianos, and then came back in full Ghostbusters garb. They'd already dressed up individually, the 3 members of Khruangbin, but they retreated, came back out, surprised us with the Ghostbusters getup, the Ghostbusters theme song, and then, like, gangsters, they pivoted into Thriller. So, I mean, just to send us off into the night on Cloud 9, it was just really just ridiculous. I'm going to give you a quick Thriller. Yeah, full-on dance party, ridiculous. And then to bring it on home, they did a double shot. And that's going to be our Vibe Junkie Jam, is the double shot of People Everywhere, an older Khruangbin song, which is just phenomenal. But in the middle of that, they swerve into Gypsy Woman by the one and only Miss Crystal Waters. It's an old school house song. I'm sure you know it. One of my favorite songs of the era. I love this song. I crank it when I clean the house. It's kind of like an inside joke. So I'm screaming at Alicia, how did they know? In between just like hurling 720s and dancing so hard, making a scene, the whole niner. So there was no way, as soon as I got my hands on it, that I wasn't going to play this People Everywhere into Gypsy Woman for the Vibe Junkie Jams. So yeah, we're going to get that Krung Bin just because we're on the Hulaween tip. And that'll wrap things up for what I thought was going to be a short episode, but ended up being even a little long. So if you're still with me, and I appreciate you if you are, I want to say thank you for letting me be myself. A deep bow of gratitude for everybody tuning in. Thank you to Hulaween. Thank you to Neal Francis. Thank you to Scott T. And yeah, just give thanks. And that'll do it for episode 51, Area 51 of the Up for Life podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz. Goodbye, God bless, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Hulaween. We're coming from Houston, Texas. And we ain't afraid of no ghosts.